Presley's got to say. She drove all the way from Austin. She's on the city council down there, I believe.
Not yet.
Not yet. She's trying to get on the, maybe that's what she's going to talk about. But she's going to talk about electronic voting, and I think everybody in this room, and I'm surprised this room is not full of people, because want to know what's going on with our electronic voting, including me and a whole bunch of others here. So I'm going to turn it over to her. Let's give her a hand.
Okay, thank you so much for having me today. It's a gorgeous day to drive from Austin. Absolutely beautiful. Well, I want to ask first of all, who in here trusts electronic voting machines? Can I see you raise your hands? Okay, that's good. Thank you for being here. You know, I ran for the Austin City Council back in 2012. And it was really interesting. You know, as candidates, we worry a lot about block walking, phone banking, kissing babies. And we don't really consider how our votes are counted, especially with the electronic voting machines, because we can't watch it. And in hindsight, I wish as a candidate I had understood that a little more deeply than I do now. And, you know, when I ran for city council in Austin, Austin had just turned into 10 districts, individual districts that we had an at-large city council before 2014. And we had 10 council members run for the 10 new districts in Austin. We had a lot of very contentious race. You know, Austin was broken up into these 10 districts, and my district was one of the poorest in the city. I don't know if you know much about Austin, but the Runberg area has a lot of crime, a lot of prostitution, and a lot of drugs. And it's one of the poorest in the city. And we're really sick of the taxes in Austin. Everybody knows Austin wastes a lot of money. And so I ran for city council. I've lived in Austin almost 28 years. And the Democrats moved in a 24-year-old candidate into my district 2 weeks before the deadline, before they could move in and run. And I was like, oh my gosh, who is this guy? Where did he come from? He lived in Austin about 2 years. He came from the University of Virginia. He'd gone to high school in Houston. And one thing we noticed, about 2 years ago, he was in college and he wrote a paper that he was an atheist. Not only did he not have but one job before running for city council, he was an atheist. So we made sure that our constituents knew that. I have a strong belief in God, and I don't think an atheist represents me. And I'll tell you another thing, poor people in my district are not atheists. We have about 50 churches in my district, and there was about 30 square miles. We have a lot of churches. So they did not elect him. We were winning in the polls. There was nothing that the Democrats in Austin could do to get this kid to win. We had electioneers at every single polling location on election night. The polls showed me at 60-something%, 55 to 60%. Electioneers at every single polling location in my district were calling, saying, "We got this, Laura. You're doing great." High-fiving, everybody's hugging, kissing us. And when the electronic results come in, he has beat me 2-1 on election night. And I did not believe it. I knew that I had won. So what do? You know, what do you do when you know that you've won the election? So I kind of draw on my knowledge. I was an engineer and manager in the semiconductor industry for about 17 years in Austin. I have 4 U.S. patents on computer technology, and I have a PhD in chemistry and physics from UT Austin. I know a little math, and I know how computers work. And so I got up the next morning, licked my wounds, and said something is wrong, and I don't know what it is. So I started analyzing a bunch of data. And what I found made me sick at my stomach. I have been a believer in our elections for, I'm 53 years old, and I've been an activist on a lot of topics, but never election integrity. So this was a challenge that was presented to me in my life. And me and my husband set up, it was 2 o'clock one morning, and we said, do we step up and take responsibility for what's occurred, or do we step back and be a victim? And what we decided to do was step up. No candidate in this state has ever filed the lawsuit that we have filed on these electronic voting machines. So what I want to do is walk through the election code first and set the stage for what our laws say about electronic voting. And I'll tell you one thing, God bless the Texas legislature because they put a lot of band-aids around this thing and a lot of checks and balances that are being absolutely ignored. So I'm going to walk through the law, I'll let you see that, and then I'm going to walk through the evidence that we got in our case. We did a recount, and it didn't show, they didn't produce the documents that's required by law, and then we did a lawsuit. And candidates across the state have known this has been a problem for about 15 years, and we're the first candidate that's ever held the state accountable and held our county accountable. So we're going to walk through the law initially. So let me ask, in this county, do you use the Hart InterCivic voting machine? Okay, so this is good. Everything that we're talking about today is applicable to Tom Green County. So as you know, you see the ballot when you vote. And you have early voting and you have election day voting. And you see the ballot with the boxes and you pick the name. Have you ever wondered where your vote goes when you do that? You ever wondered that? I did. After this I did. So your vote goes on to what's called a memory card, a mobile ballot box. Any election judges in here who were electioned this time? Okay, I love election judges. I love having you guys in the presentation. So you guys know, as judges, the votes go onto this memory card, and where does the memory card go? It goes down to the county. And I'll tell you something, if you're going to steal an election, do you want to worry about the individual precincts where these things are happening? Or would you like to be at the main location where all of the cards come to you? Okay, I'm an engineer and I'm a manager of engineers. We like doing things efficiently. Imagine Houston, where it has 1,000 precincts and you've got maybe 2 judges per precinct, per polling location, maybe, and some poll watchers. Why would you worry about messing with 1,000 precincts when all you have to do is be at one computer where all the cards are coming in? And that's what we saw with our lawsuit. So keep that in mind. Okay, let's walk through the law and how great the Texas legislature is, and they tried to put some band-aids around this thing. So in Texas, we have this wonderful election code, chapter 52. It's amazing. It really defines voting in the state. And not all states across the country do this, so we're very, very lucky. And Chapter 52, it says the vote in an election is by official ballot. Pretty simple, but that's a very important statement. You can't vote on any old piece of paper in the state of Texas, and thank God for that. Okay? But what's an official ballot? Well, you know what? The legislature defined that too. They very carefully said what an official ballot is. The Constitution, the state constitution, and the election code both say you have to have a serial number. You have to have a sequential serial number to make sure that the ballot is traceable and that we don't have any extra duplicate ballots out there or ballots that we can't account for. So the Article 6, Section 4 says you got to have a number. And the code also says you have to have a number. Again, you can't vote on any old piece of paper in Texas. You just can't do it. Also, the law says, Chapter 52, that you have to have the name and date of the election on the ballot. Well, who knew? Seems pretty simple, right? Okay, you also have to have voting squares. You know how you have the square to the left of the name of all the candidates? That's required by law. That's what's on a ballot in the state of Texas. You also have to have instructions that say, do you vote for one person or do you vote for multiple people? Okay? And in our election, we didn't believe the results from the electronic voting machines. About 500 ballots were cast ballot by mail on paper ballots, and then about 4,000 ballots were cast on electronic voting. And so when we did our recount, we recounted those paper ballots. And guess what? It was an exact tie. 50%, 50% on the paper ballots. On the electronic ballots, that's where it came in the 2-to-1. And that's what I didn't believe. So when we did the recount, we got copies of these paper ballots, of the mail-in, the absentee. And look at there. It's got the date of the election. It has the names of all the candidates' boxes. It even has a serial number. That's a ballot. It meets what the Texas Code says is an official ballot. Okay? So, the law also says there's 3 records that have to be retained to prove what we voted, to prove what the computer said. Okay? This is the checks and balances and the insight of the legislature. The first thing you have to have is a computer to add up all those cards. Okay? It's chapter 128. It talks about result tabulation. You got to add up all those cards coming into that one computer. And election judges, you know this one, precinct returns. You have to have precinct returns printed and signed by election judges before the equipment leaves the building. So let me ask you, judges, did you guys print the tapes, the results tapes that have each candidate result? Did y'all print those? Were you election judge? Okay,
Yeah,
since you
yes, yes.
No, we did not print the total.
No,
were. Okay. A lot of counties are not printing it, and I'm going to tell you something,
No.
it's a misdemeanor for judges not to print them.
Huh.
Okay?
okay.
Chapter 66 and 65 say you have to have original precinct terms and returns in envelope 1, and envelope 3 has to have a copy, and you have to sign them. And the reason you do that is in case there's a problem with that equipment as it's being transferred to the county, you've got a backup paper record that's signed by somebody who was at the building in the precinct. That's what's required by the law. And I'm going to show you more about that. The third thing the law requires is to keep a ballot image. Well, what's a ballot? Serial number, boxes, name and date of the election, instructions. That's what the law says a ballot is. And the law says you have to have ballot image storage. What's an image?
Picture.
A picture. Pretty simple. Okay? And that's in 3 sections of the law. It's in the code that says you have to have a ballot image. It also says what you use images of ballots in a recount. And then also there's certification of these voting machines that says you have to have ballot image certification. Okay? 3 records. Tabulation, the tape, and the ballot image. Okay? Well, let's see how Travis County, where I ran for city council, how well did they adhere to these laws? Let's talk about the tapes first. And this is in the chapter 66, exactly the wording of chapter 66. The contents of envelope 1 must contain the original election returns for the precinct. Chapter 66.24, contents of envelope 3 must, doesn't say possibly could contain, it says must, a copy of the returns. Results and tally have to be signed by judges, that's in 65, and failure to return them is a Class B misdemeanor. Okay, pretty straightforward. And this is what they look like. They're thermal tapes with everybody's name and the votes they got, and they're official election records that are retained for about 22 months. So here's a tape, an example of one for those who haven't been judges. This is a tape that's usually pretty long, and this is when, in my precinct in Austin, this is when Cruz was running against Dewhurst for the U.S. Senate. You see each candidate got so many votes, and that's printed out, it's signed by judges, and it's retained as a backup record in case something happens. Okay? In Travis County, they told the judges, don't print it. Don't print the tally. Wow.
Who is that?
The county clerk. Okay? Instruction on the JBC, Judge's Booth Controller envelope, says do not print the tally. Wow. You know, I don't believe the results of my election, and that record is missing. The county told them not to print it. That's a big problem. I'm in a $160,000 lawsuit, and I sure wish I had the tapes. It's a lot cheaper to print those tapes than this lawsuit. Okay, so why did they not print them? Well, there's something going on in the state called countywide voting locations. Is Tom Green a countywide?
Yeah.
Okay. So countywide. What happens in countywide, you can vote anywhere in the county, right? And so now everybody from all these other precincts are voting in some precincts. It just takes a little longer to print. And so what the Secretary of State's doing is saying to counties, don't worry, don't print the tape. It takes too long. Okay? That's why there's waivers to law that are being given by the Secretary of State. And this is an example of one of the letters. This was done in 2014 for my election. And it's hard to read, a lot of words. But basically it says, don't print the tapes. Just print that access code report, which just says how many people voted. Yes, sir?
How do they print the tapes?
It's a thermal print of the machine. You push print tab.
Push a button.
The card?
Pardon? It's like a cash register.
The card, do they print it from the card?
No, they print it from the JBC, the Judge's Booth Controller. You push print tape and it prints the tape.
Okay.
Print the tally is what it's called. And that's why back here it says do not print the tally, because judges typically do it. Okay? Yes, sir?
Is that done off of each machine or total tally at the precinct?
It's at the polling location.
For all the machines that are
All
attached.
the machines that add up to one. Yes, sir, good question. Okay, so Keith Ingram, does anybody know Keith Ingram of the Elections Division? He works for the Secretary of State's office. He represents the Secretary of State. And he says, don't print the tapes. And he says this statute here, 43.007, does not, is what he's referring to, it gives him authority, but it does not. Mr. Ingram does not have authority to give counties waivers to law. Okay? So we asked our county clerk in our lawsuit, she was on the witness stand, why are you not printing the tapes? Who gives you the authority to not follow law? And she said, well, the Secretary of State. So we asked her, what's the final law? And she said, there's additional instruction directives from the Secretary of State's office that says we don't follow that law, we do something else.
Yeah.
My lawyer's really good. He's really good. And he said, can you repeat that? So he said, do you think the Secretary of State can tell you not to follow state law? And she says, I know they can. Okay, absolutely. She says it 3 times. The Secretary of State can tell her not to follow law. And then she can tell judges subsequent to that to not follow law. Even though it's a Class B misdemeanor to not turn the tapes in. Okay? And we disagree. We're the first candidate that has filed a lawsuit citing these irregularities and these illegalities. Yes, sir.
So is the lawsuit the only way we can hold him accountable?
There's a couple of ways, and we'll talk about that. Good question. Okay? But here's the issue. When you have the Secretary of State over the whole state doing this, that's where the problem is. That's right. Okay. All right. Let's talk a little. So 3 records, right? The tabulation, the tape. Oops, we don't have that. What about the ballot image? That's the 3rd one. Let's talk about the ballot image. This is the statute that talks about the ballot image. Now it comes into play 3 places. I'm going to show you 2 of them. I'll show you all 3 actually. What it talks about is, this is in 1997 when electronic voting was about to hit the scene in Texas. What was going on in 1997? Did we trust computers very much? Not really. Netscape was an internet provider in 97. Who remembers Netscape, right? They're no longer around, right? It's gritty, it's kind of funny. But we didn't trust computers, so the legislature really wanted to put some band-aids around this thing about to come into the state in 97. So it says here you have to have a main computer to coordinate many things. And this basically came out of the 1997 Federal Election Commission requirements for the standards for electronic voting. Okay? You have to have multiple things. You have to have ballot presentation. You have to see the ballot. You have to have vote selection. You have to, the little wheel, okay, check, we did that. Ballot image storage and result tabulation. You have both of these. What's a ballot? Serial number, boxes, date of the election, name of the election, all of it, instructions. And what's an image? It's a picture. But you also want to have result tabulation. And from a computer science standpoint, who in here likes computer science? Anybody? A few people? I know a few. Okay. An image file is for viewing, right? It's pixels. An image file is for viewing. A data structure is what you use to add things up. Okay? Those in computer science know that. An image file is for viewing, and a data structure is how you add things up. All right. And it requires both. That's what the law says. Because in 1990, the Federal Election Commission had those standards defined, the legislature just didn't come up with this off the top of their head. They were following what they were recommended to do. Okay, so that was there. The second place in the law that ballot images come into play is in the recount. And this is really what candidates for the last 13 years have known. You're supposed to have a ballot image to do a manual recount. You can do a recount in a couple of ways with the electronic machines. You can just run it through the same program, or you can actually print ballot images and count. And that's what we asked for. And the county said, we can't give you a ballot image. They said, we can't give it to you, but we can give you something else, and I'm going to show you what they gave us. But what's interesting is, across the state of Texas, not one of the electronic voting machines can keep a ballot image. Nobody. Your system cannot keep a ballot image here in Tom Green County. Dallas County uses ES&S. They can't do it. Okay? Nowhere in the state can a real ballot image occur. Yes, sir.
Yes, I have been involved in elections since '92. And I did a recount just as we were phasing in the electronic. Now, the part that I had in this, I sat at a table with 4 people with the candidates wandering about the room.
What year was this? Can you tell me?
92, I believe.
Okay, so this was before electronic voting, because it wasn't certified until 2000.
Now, we had partial electronic voting, and that's what I was beefing about. There was no way to recount the electronic vote except to hit replay on the damned machine, which is going to give you the same number that it gave you yesterday.
Exactly, and this is why we didn't do the program again recount. We did a ballot image recount, and that's required, that is allowed by law. This is the statute that talks about images of ballots cast. You have to print them for the recount. And so we asked, and Travis County said, we don't have them, okay? That's a violation of state law. Candidates across the state have known this. They know that they can't get a real ballot image in a recount for 13 years. So what did the county produce? And this is what, most likely, if you guys have done a recount, a manual recount here in Tom Green, this is what they'll give you. It's called a cast vote record. And I'm going to tell you, cast vote record, that term is nowhere in the election code for a recount or anywhere else. This is a term that came up after the laws were passed. This is what was produced, 4,000 pages that look like this, supposedly printed 1 per page of what that data structure, that computer said we voted, what the tabulation said. And this is it blown up. Is there a serial number on that piece of paper? Do you even see a date of the election on that piece of paper? December 14, 2016. I'm sorry, 2014. December 16, 2014. There's no date on this piece of paper. My name's not even on it, and I was running. There's no boxes. This is not a ballot. It's not an image of a ballot. It's not even an image file. This is a data structure from the computer tabulation printed 1 per page to a template. And not a very good template, if you ask my opinion. And this is what was counted, 4,000 of these. And I said, stop the presses. You're violating state law. This is not a ballot image. So none of these components are on this piece of paper. And this is what's being provided, guys, across the state for any candidate that wants a recount. It doesn't meet the legal definition of a ballot. And candidates have known this for years, and no one's done anything about it. We're the first person to file a lawsuit challenging it. Okay. So one of the things that, in defense of the Secretary of State, that they have said is that, well, there's this law that says that the Secretary of State can modify the form of a ballot. And what it says is you can do that if you have to conform to the formatting requirements of the system. So the law says that the Secretary of State can change the ballot to conform to the formatting requirements. Well, the last thing I thought was that the Hart voting machine can format a ballot, because you know what, I see it when I vote. Do you see boxes when you vote? Do you see all the candidates' names? Do you see the date of the election on it? Yeah. So for the Secretary of State to use this argument, it's disingenuous, because the equipment can format a ballot, and if it can't, that's big news. Especially for everybody that's ever voted on one of those machines. It can format a ballot. And basically what it does, it shows you a ballot image when you vote. It does. So this is a bad argument, and this is what we're dealing with. You see it when you vote, the ballot, and actually the system formats the paper ballot too. So it can format a ballot. If it can't format a ballot, I think they're in breach of contract with the state of Texas. So here's what's interesting. Ballot images are discussed in this waiver letter. He says, oh, go ahead and waive the tapes, because ballot images remain on the voting machines. Well, Mr. Ingram, they don't. I wonder if Mr. Ingram knows the definition of a legal ballot, because it's not a ballot. Even Travis County's website says the Hart system captures an image of each ballot cast. Well, they couldn't produce it. They can talk all day long and put nice little statements on the internet, but when it comes down to it and the candidate asks, they can't produce it. So, I have 4 patents in computer technology. I know how to read patents. The Hart patents say it can keep a ballot image. Isn't that interesting? So the question we have in our lawsuit is, do they have them on the machine somewhere and they're just not able to produce them? Or did they just not save them at all? So I went to the patents. The patents say they keep an exact electronic replica of the cast vote. This is the certification documents when the equipment came in 2000. Electronic ballot image system. You have to have printing of electronic ballot images and logs. There you go, the certification documents, they had to fill this out so they could do it. Okay? Another patent, it says exact copy of the cast ballot images moved to the memory. Gosh, looks like they can do it. And actually another patent says they take an unvoted bitmap of the ballot and a voted bitmap of the ballot, and they subtract those, and that's how they get the data structure to add up the votes. They can keep it. Where is it? We want to know where it is. Okay, so outside of the law, there were a lot of issues we got in discovery with our lawsuit. Again, this was the first lawsuit that says we can't trust the voting results. There's no ballot image. There's no tape. There's only what the computer said we voted. No, that's not good enough. The legislature said you got to have 2 backups, and we don't have them in my case. Even though we supposedly lost by 1,300 votes, 4,000 ballot images are missing about how the people voted. And my gosh, the only ballot that remains is that paper ballot, which is tied. So we don't know who won. Okay, that's the crux of the lawsuit. So many other irregularities occurred in our election. And we're going to walk through each one of these. During early voting, lists of voters go out to campaigns. People who have worked on campaigns, you know that you get lists of people who early voted, so you take them off your rolls. You don't worry about blocking them. Well, there were more ballots cast in early voting than there were names on the rolls in almost every precinct. And I'm going to show you that.
And is the early voting on the machine?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, it is. We had memory cards with corruption errors. I'll show you that. We got that in the lawsuit in the discovery. There were security breaches where the seals on the machines were broken, the security seals, and they were replaced. I'll show you that. There were extended logons on May computers. You know how your computer logs off after about 15 minutes? The computers at the county were open 10 days straight with no log out. That's a little surprising. That's a security breach. They obstructed our poll watchers from signing the tapes. Poll watchers are supposed to sign the tapes. They were obstructed. We had some statistical analysis showing that the vote tabulation is not credible. Anybody in here like math? Okay, I love math, so you're going to have to bear with me, but it's pretty easy to understand, and I'll show you that. And then we had a PhD in computer science that said, no, this is not good. Yeah, the vote tabulation is corrupted, and you can't determine what the result of the vote is. And actually, that ballot image is not, that cast vote record is not a ballot image, it's actually a data structure. So we pretty much knocked everything out of the park on this. Okay, let's walk through a little bit of the early voting. So, you know, I ran for city council in Austin. It's just a little city council race. We had 18 precincts. And these are my precincts. And these are the number of ballots cast in each precinct. And these are the number of voters that were listed. And these are the excess number of ballots. Almost every precinct had more ballots than names. And I think the law says you can be 2 or 3 off, not 12 or 11 or 9 or 4 or 5. This is a big deal. Something was going on. And actually, this is a fingerprint of a hack because the programs aren't perfect. And so every precinct being off is a fingerprint. Okay, so here's the math, so get ready. This is my favorite part. So, you know, I was up, you know, the day after the results came out, I was like, what is going on? This doesn't make sense. And I said, if I were going to steal an election, how would I do it? And there's a rule in engineering called the 80-20 rule. Anybody heard of the 80-20 rule? Well, engineers do this. We focus on the big hitters, 80% of where the big issues are, and that's what you focus on, and you go address those. So I said, I'm going to look at the precincts where 80% of the voters voted, and I'm just going to look at that, okay? And it was about 9 precincts out of 18. And then I said, we were in a general election with my opponent, my 25-year-old opponent. And we had 6 other candidates in the general, and he and I proceeded to the runoff. So what I did, this is unique, but it was a very good idea to do it this way. I looked at what I received as votes in those precincts and what he received in those precincts in the general. And I ignored the other 6 candidates. Just looked at him and my ratio. And this was the percent that I got, okay? And then in the runoff, I did the same thing, mine and his, and what percent I got. Now, 4,000 voters had traded out between the general and the runoff, and that's what happens in runoffs. Not as many people vote. But what happened was shocking. Some precincts stayed exactly the same percent, which doesn't make sense. That doesn't hold water. When I saw this, I got sick at my stomach. I was really sick. So a statistician who helped us with the lawsuit told me, Laura, do this. He said, plot on the x-axis what you got in the general, and on the y-axis what you got in the runoff by precinct, and see if there's a correlation. I said, okay, we did that. And he said, do it for other candidates, because there were a lot of runoffs in that race. There were other districts that had a runoff. So we did that. And I'm going to show you what theirs look like and what mine looks like. So here's one candidate. I was District 4. This is District 6. And it was this guy's general on the X and his runoff on the Y. And I did 80% of where people voted in his election. Apples to apples. And you just see kind of a scatter plot. This is another candidate, District 7, scatter plot. Another one, District 1, and this one's mine.
Whoa.
It's a straight line with R squared of 0.98. This is really upsetting. What this says is there was a program that was used for the general election and another one that was used for the runoff, and they used the same program. They didn't even change it a couple percent. I might not have caught it if it was changed. If they hadn't been so greedy to think he would win 2-1, if it 49-51, I might not have challenged this. This says there's a program. And I worked in Motorola and Advanced Micro Devices for 17 years as an engineer and manager, and I would shut down $1 billion factory on data less correlated than that. My engineering eye knows what this means. This is a program. I was sick at my stomach. I went to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I woke my husband up, and I said, I think my election was stolen, and I don't know what we're going to do. And it felt like I had touched the devil. I mean, that's what it felt like. It was sick. I was sick. I was nauseous. And again, we had a decision at that point. Do we step up and challenge this, or do we step back and be a victim? And we decided to step up. We're the first candidate in the state of Texas that has found problems with the electronic voting machine and filed a lawsuit. And we've said no more. And you've got the Secretary of State's office giving waivers to the backup records. And you got the Secretary of State's office is saying that that cast vote record's a valid image. Do y'all think it's a valid image? It is not. It doesn't meet it as a computer science standpoint or legal standpoint. Again, we're the first ones to do this. And I've had candidates all over the state call me and said, we didn't know how to approach this problem, but we knew there was a problem. So there's one more piece to this story. We think there's something wrong with the tabulation, right? We think there was a program. So let's go to that third record, and let's try to figure out what happened with that. So remember, the vote on the machine goes on the card, and the card goes down to the county, and they all go to one place at that main computer. So we told our lawyer we want the audit logs of that main computer. And you can get that. It's a time date stamp of every single thing that happened on that computer on election night. And you won't believe what we found. We found corruption errors all election night, 9 times on election night. And if you notice, here at 12:30 on election day, he started adding up early votes. That's when the very first card they put in. And all during election night, you had corruption errors. That's the last word I want to see on the main county computer of the county, the word corrupt. Is that what you want to see on your county computer? No. Yes, sir.
What flagged the invalid corrupt for that?
That's a great question. So we asked the judge when we saw these, we said we'd like to take the deposition of the guy putting this card in 9 times on election night. How come it's 9 times? Is it 1 card? Is it 9 cards? We don't know. We just got the log. And we said, can we look at the card and get the software and look at what's on the card causing it to be corrupt? And he said, no, you cannot get that. He refused us from getting it. Okay? So, other thing that's interesting, the corrupt card gets put in right before my precincts get put in. These are my precincts right here. Corruption, my precinct. Corruption, my precinct. Corruption, my precinct. Corruption, my precinct.
Oh my gosh.
How convenient to see a corruption error right before my precincts are loaded. What we think is there's a program being loaded right before they put my stuff in.
Excuse me,
Yes, sir.
did that only show up in your particular precincts? Or were there corruptions in other precincts also?
It was not random. The corruption error occurred before cards were put in.
For her precinct at the county.
Yes.
Just yours?
There are, some of these are not my precincts, but mine are the ones first after the correct was put in. Yeah. So 9 times on election night this occurred. And what you see is, this is a kind of an eye chart, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. These are the pages with the groupings of the corruption errors. There were 9 of them on election night. And what we did, we had an expert witness. He has a PhD in computer science, and so he read a bunch of reports about Hart InterCivic. And there was a key report written. There's a lot of reports have been written, but you kind of have to filter through the important ones. The most important one was one done in 2007 by the Secretary of State of California. They looked at the source code, the computer code of the Hart machine. And there were professors on there, one from Rice and one from Stanford. And what they documented was amazing. This corrupt mechanism was a hack scenario they predicted in 2007. Our witness, Dr. Jacobson, this is a quote from that report in 2007. An adversary may introduce corrupt mobile ballot boxes into the legitimate flow of mobile ballot boxes from the precincts back to Election Central, where all the cards are coming in, and this could damage the credibility of the vote counting process. And look at this. Corrupt cards and the flow of normal cards coming in from the precinct back in Election Central. Check, check, check. This is a documented hack scenario was identified 8 years ago. So then we asked who had access to these cards, because you can have a program on that card. You can have votes on the card, you can have anything. We don't know what caused it to be corrupt. We asked for that. We asked to get to the card and we were told no. So what we did, we asked for the audit log of where the cards are programmed. So we got that. And what we found was surprising. On 11/21, you see mobile ballot box is opened. It's not logged out until 10 days later. So are there entries missing between here? Or was it really sitting there for 10 days and no log out? Either way is not good. Again, mobile ballot box loaded on 12/1, logged out on 12/10, 9 days later. And that's during early voting. Who had access to these cards? My computer logs off after 15 minutes. 10 days straight, 9 days.
Did they give you a name of the individual?
We could not get to the person. We could not get the deposition. We could not get the card. And then the judge said, Ms. Pressley, you have no evidence, so we're dismissing the case with a no evidence summary judgment. You have no evidence. And we're like, well, sir, we think we do. And there was a deal on the table. We were sanctioned $40,000 for a frivolous lawsuit.
Oh, my.
And there was a deal on the table that said, we will forego the sanctions if you will not appeal.
Blackmail?
There's a giveaway.
I said, we're going to appeal. Somebody's got to do this.
I think I'd be guilty of contempt of court.
I know. You would think, that seems like a bribe, doesn't it? It seems like it to me. And we said we're appealing.
I have a question about the
Yes,
card.
Yes.
Is it in each individual voting heart or whatever
It's like-
machine, or is it tallied or in the JBS?
It's in the JBC.
JBC.
It's in the JBC. And
Okay.
I think there's a security seal that keeps it in there. But you know, you can replace those. That's what we've seen. They undo them and put them back on and take a little note. You don't know how long it's been off. There's no, you don't know. These cards are just, anybody can get a hold of these cards.
Okay.
Okay, so that's where we are. So we filed this lawsuit, and again, it's cost us about $160,000 so far. $80,000 of that, my husband and I, from our own savings, put that into the case, and we've raised about $80,000. So it's been a very big challenge for us. Okay, so I'm going to go back. There's 3 things again, guys. You got to have a tape. Well, we don't have that. You got to have the ballot image. We don't have that. Wow, and the tabulation is corrupted. So that's the basis of our lawsuit. We can't tell how the voters voted. 4,000 ballot images are missing. Okay, we have things in place in the legislature and they're being ignored. Okay, so let's back up. This happened in Travis County. Let's back up and see what's going on across the state of Texas and see how Tom Green fits into this. There's 2 kinds of voting that we have in the state. You have precinct level, where people vote at their precinct, and then you have the countywide, okay? Even in the precincts, you have some counties not printing the tapes, and some counties printing them. And I've been to many of these counties, done a presentation, talked to the judges, or I've talked to them on the phone. And this is kind of the layout. Countywide polling locations. There are plenty of counties printing the tapes in countywide. And it only takes about an hour to print the tapes. And then there's a lot of counties not printing. And I'm going to put Tom Green into the not printing. So look at this. Every permutation possible is going on across the state of Texas. I don't think that's what the legislature wanted. The Secretary of State is supposed to guarantee and administer consistent procedures for elections. Otherwise, you have fraud that you've opened the door, right? Permutation possible is going on. There's no guess at how we're doing this across the state, okay? Now, I want to show you in the law and the Secretary of State's own handbook that says you're supposed to print those tapes. This is the Judge's Handbook for 2017, and this is a section, page 53 of it, and it has to do with DREs, direct recording electronic equipment, are used. And these are the procedures the Secretary of State requires. And looky here, envelope 1 is supposed to have the tape, and he even references the law. So don't let the Secretary of State tell anybody that the tape is not supposed to be printed for those electronic machines. They're saying it right here. It's his own words. Again, envelope 2 prints the tape. Envelope 3, print the tape. So why is it that he can waive law? Like the clerk thinks he can, okay? So I want to reference us that Chapter 66 does apply to the electronic machines. And he'll say it doesn't apply. Well, his own words say it does, okay? So let's look at early voting. Early voting is an interesting bear, let's call it. Again, you have precinct voting, and you have people not printing the tapes during early, and some people printing the tapes, some counties printing the tapes during early. And you have countywide printing and not printing.
I didn't think they could print tapes in early.
They can. There's nothing in the election code, Sheila, and I've looked at word by word in the early voting code. It doesn't say not to print the tapes. Actually, it applies back to this. It applies back to that. There are plenty of counties printing the tapes during early voting. Okay? So I'm going to tell you, that's all about waivers the Secretary of State's giving to counties for electronic voting. What about counties that do paper ballots? There are a lot of counties that do paper ballots in the state of Texas still. And what they do, they have a machine that counts the ballots. You can have a program on that machine too. So to deal with that, there's a chapter 127 of the election code that says counties that do paper have to do an audit, a hand-counted manual audit of 3 precincts for those paper ballots. Well, Mr. Ingram gave a waiver to 254 counties and said, don't do the audit. Don't do the paper ballot audit.
Did you say waiver or favor?
Oh, I love it! Waiver or favor. I'm going to use that. That's awesome. So, and you know, counties, you're absentee. They're paper, so you're supposed to audit 3 precincts to make sure that computer that's counting those ballots doesn't have a program on it. He waived it for every county in the state for the primaries. I called Keith. Well, I called the elections division, and I got Andre on the phone. I said, hey, Andre, I've talked to him before. I said, why did Keith give a waiver to every county for these paper ballot audits? He goes, I don't know anything about that, hold on. So he put me through to Keith's office. Keith picks up the phone. I said, hey, Keith, it's Laura Pressley, how you doing? He goes, fabulous. We're not the best buddies. We're not the best buddies. He's got a big job, and he needs to take it very seriously, I think.
And what he's doing.
And I said, why did you give a waiver to 254 counties completely across the state of Texas to do the paper ballot audits? He said, that's what we do. Quote unquote. And I said, but Keith, why did you give it for every county across the state? Because the statute says you can pick a particular it says, the law says the Secretary of State can waive the audit for a particular political subdivision, which is a county. So why'd you give it for all the counties? He said, because that's what we do. It was like I was 4 years old and my mother was saying, because I said so. There was no reason he gave me. I think there's a problem there. There were a lot of cases, there were a lot of races in the primaries that we needed to make sure that the paper ballot was correct.
And he's appointed by Abbott.
Keith is the elections, he's a bureaucrat that works for the Secretary of State, Carlos Coscos, who was appointed by Greg Abbott. So what he's done across the state said that cast vote record's a valid image. Well, it's not. He's given waivers to the tapes, to law, number 2. Number 3, he's now waived every county paper ballot audit. Are y'all happy about that?
And Greg Abbott knows about this.
Yes. Yes, we're working that. It has not been resolved yet. Okay, so here's the waiver, and look who it's addressed to. County, this is county clerks, election administrator, and county chairs. Who's the county chair? Did you see this waiver?
Yes.
You did, okay. Waiver of partial manual count to all the counties in the state. That's a problem. Where's the checks and balances that the legislature intended?
Is that because they don't have time, or is it a cover-up?
I don't know. Hey, I asked. Because he said that's how they do it.
That's what they do.
That's what they do.
Magic wand.
That sounds like a bureaucrat.
That's what they do.
Well, can the counties,
The counties could have still done it. It doesn't say don't do it. It says that it says this is your official notification of the waiver. They could have still done it, and I bet they didn't do it.
Would that be up to the county chair?
It would be up to the county. Do you know if you did the partial count?
What?
You should ask.
Waiver.
I know. You should ask. Again, where's the checks and balances? So guys, if we don't have honest elections that have checks and balances that we can verify the result, what do we have?
Corruption.
We have corruption.
Banana Republic.
How many in here are veterans? Is this what you sacrificed for?
Obviously.
You're good. You're good. Okay. Let's step back. Let's look at kind of the election system as a whole. There's 3 times we can vote. You can vote on a paper ballot, you can vote early, and you can vote on election day with electronic. So let's walk through each one of these. So paper ballot, the computer tabulates the result. But you know what? You've got a paper ballot to go back to for a recount. If you want to pay for the $100 per precinct to do a recount and you're a candidate, you can do that, and I did. And I counted my paper ballots. Early voting is very interesting. The computer tabulates it. Well, there's no ballot image as a backup. And you know what? Mostly early voting, there's no tape. Let's look at election day. The computer tabulates. We know there's no ballot image. Some counties print the tapes, maybe. When is your vote most secure? When is it least secure?
Early voting.
When are we told to vote?
Early.
Yeah. I will never vote early again. And I'll tell you what, you guys in Tom Green County have a lot of control and a lot of power. Tomorrow morning, I want you to call your election administrator and tell them you want the tape printed on the primaries, on the runoff in May, and going forward. You can do that. You can force your election administrator to print the tape, to tell judges to print the tape. And you know what? It's a misdemeanor. And they're going to say, well, Keith said it's okay. No, no, no. You report to us. We want it done. And they can print it early, and they can print it on election day. There are plenty of counties doing it. Yes, sir.
If you vote early, but you vote on paper.
There you go. That works. But you have to be over 65 or disabled?
No.
Here?
No, no.
Oh, you're so lucky. So there you go. But for those that do, they're not in this room. You need the security of the tape. If we don't have an image, we need the tape. Yes, ma'am.
Several years ago, I worked for an election, and at the end, we printed off the tape, and there was nothing to it.
That's right. I know.
I got to hit the button.
That's right. You have to ask, what's the real reason to not print the tape? Okay, I had a woman in Tarrant County. She was 80, she was about 90 years old. She's about this tall. She came up, she said, Dr. Pressley, the Lord told me not to vote early. And I said, my dear, he was right. Look, he knew. And I tell you one thing about this electronic voting, corruption can hide in complexity, right? Absolutely, this stuff's complex. It's been 13 years. Candidates didn't know what to do, didn't know how to deal with this. This is a perfect storm. Yes, sir.
On the election law, since obviously I haven't read it, do they require that these tapes be kept for a certain?
22 months. Yes, sir. They're there for recounts and for contests.
So we could go down to the election office tomorrow and say, oh, by the way, could I see the tally?
Yeah. You can do a public information request and get it.
And when they don't exist, then we ask a guy with a gun and a badge to come?
If they don't have them, they don't have them. You could file misdemeanor charges against the judges. Do you want to do that? Yeah.
Well, their excuse would be they had a waiver.
Doesn't matter. The law doesn't say because you have a waiver, it's not a misdemeanor. So you judges, you know what? We're not playing Monopoly. This is real stuff. When you're there, you print the tapes. Okay? We had judges in Parker County that were told not to print. They printed them anyway because they said, it's a misdemeanor, I'm going to do it. Oh my, the election administrators are crazy.
Taped on our JBC, do not print final tally.
You got it. But where it's a backup record. I sure wish I had the tapes in my election. I might not be here. Yes, sir.
You never, I guess, gave an answer. Can Hart have the images?
That's a great question. We don't, we think they do. The patents say it can do it. They would be in breach of contract with the state of Texas if they couldn't do it. We don't know if there's a button. And, here's a good one. And where's Sheila? She should remind me of this one. So we asked the county, we said, for the e-slate machine, right? That's where the ballot image is stored. That's when you look at it, you vote. So we said, well, in Discovery, we want the manual. And the county said, we don't have it. You don't have the manual? We spend millions of dollars on this equipment, you don't have the manual? And we said, well, if you had the manual, maybe you could print it. Maybe tell you how to print it. Yes, ma'am.
I think you said that the tape is a thermal tape.
Yes.
Doesn't, after a certain time, that printing?
Yes, it stays for 22 months.
22
It does. It has to, that's the law, it has to require. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I was under the impression that in our county, they were printed when they went back to the office. The reason we didn't print them at the site was because it would take a lot longer to close out.
It may. It may take longer to close out, but the goal is to print it before the cards go to the county and get corrupted. And to print them at the central count, you now lost chain of custody. So you judges, do you go down to central count and wait for them to print it?
Nope.
No.
Turn you away.
That's right. You're supposed to sign it because that was your equipment at that location. So to print them at the county doesn't work.
Yes, it does. The county, the judges go with their equipment back to the central county, so they don't lose the chain of custody.
Do they sign the tapes when they're printed?
No.
No.
If they were printed, they could, yes, they're there with their machine.
But they're not printed.
We're there with the machines, but we don't stay while they print them.
I didn't say you did, but you could.
Yeah, we could.
Chain of custody is what you said.
Now that we know.
No, we don't.
The key is to print it at the location before the equipment leaves the building. Yes, ma'am.
Can I give
No, it's
just
not.
a brief
You're
about?
wrong. I'm going to leave now. I'm the county sheriff. You can call me sometime. I'd love to have a chat with you.
Why don't you stick around, bud?
Thank you.
Wait, where'd he go?
This is a difficult topic, guys. Let me tell you something. To see the violations that are going on and the laws that are being broken is not a pretty story. And you in here are the leaders, and you can do something about it. Yes, sir.
Going back to what you had to say, when I am a precinct judge,
Yes, sir.
I print everything.
Good. Did you print the
I print
tapes?
it twice and I keep it.
Did you print the tapes for this election?
I did not work this election.
Okay.
I have worked every other one since '92.
In November, did you print the tape?
Yes,
Good job.
yes.
Thank you.
When I work, I always
Yes,
print everything.
This is actually the first election we've not printed the tape.
exactly. There are many counties like that.
And
And then look at this, they just waived all the ballots for the paper too. There was something up here. What was going on? Why is this so important to to not have these backup records and not have these checks and balances. These elected people are accountable to everyone. You are the leaders, and you can demand that this be changed. Okay? So, I'm here for oh, bless y'all, thank you. So I'm here for 2 reasons. The first reason is to educate and empower each of you to step up. You don't have to file a lawsuit. If you can step up to your own county and your election administrators and your county chairs, you can. Yes. So that's number 1. And interesting, this last primary, we had poll watchers at main computers on election night. Isn't that interesting? You can see and prevent those corruption errors. There was a county, Llano County, also had a corruption error at the very beginning when they were first loading all the cards. Exactly what we had. The first card was corrupted in ours, and that sets the stage for the rest, right? So in Llano County, they had a corrupt card. We had a poll watcher there, and he told the election administrator, do not just accept that error, pull the card out and set it aside. And that's what they did. So they were educated on what to do when they saw it. You guys can have poll watchers at the main computer on election night in May, and I would recommend you do it. And you don't leave, and you watch for those corruption errors, and I will help come and train anybody that wants to do that. Because we've got to get the word out. There were other counties that we had corruption errors in. Travis County had them again. They just did it with impunity, didn't care who was watching. Dallas County was the worst. Poll watchers were obstructed from even getting to the main computer. They wouldn't even let them in, even though the law says they can. It was amazing. Yes, sir?
Where would the main computer be?
Well, it's usually at the county office, at the main elections office at the county. And you can find out where that is.
Anyone can go there and...
Yeah, well, you have to be an official poll watcher. You have to have a candidate that you can vote for, assign you as the poll watcher, and you show up, and you sit there, and you watch the main computer, and you don't leave. And they'll say, come over here, look at this, and you say, no, I'm watching the main computer. And they'll say, come over, no, I'm watching the main computer, because it can happen in 5 seconds.
How do you become a poll watcher?
You got to get a candidate to assign you as their watcher. And I will come and train anybody. You just set some people up, I'll come and I'll help you. Because we have to take this back.
And here we have just one computer that all the cards go into. And it's right there separate from anything else.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's off in a special room by itself.
That's right. And you have, poll watchers have the duty under the law that they can watch. They can watch any activity associated with an election. Any activity associated with an election. And that computer is hooked up to a printer that documents these corruption errors. So that audit log is being printed. You have the duty and the legal right to watch that printer and document the time and date when the corruption error occurred. And when your candidate, that's the good candidate, loses, and they should have won, you go to them and say, file a contest, because something happened.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
So what you're saying, the bottom line is, there's nothing
Speak
wrong.
louder.
Come here, come here.
No.
No.
10-4?
Go.
Okay. What you're saying is, there's nothing wrong with the system. It's the people running it. It's the corruption.
Oh, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, because of the computer system is so complex,
Okay.
you can hide, corruption can hide in it, because people don't understand how this stuff works.
She wasn't allowed to look at the card or have the cards present. She wasn't allowed to look at the code pages for the printer.
Yeah, we couldn't
Well,
get to
that
this.
means that the system would work if it wasn't for crooked people.
No.
No? Okay.
You don't know.
Well, you have to, crooked people are who drive this, right? So, you know, the big picture is, what is the most secure, and what is a way that you can watch the counting of the votes happen? Because that's what we have to do. Yes, sir.
This system that, every county in Texas is using, is the whole nation using this system?
Not every county, because there are counties still doing paper, and they're using an electronic machine to count those, right? So there's a mix all across the country and all across the state. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Not all counties are using the hard equipment.
No, not all's using HART. There's another, ES&S is another one. Yeah, yes, sir.
Has anyone gone back and looked at the people that benefit from the HART system, you know, the corporate executives or whatever, and seen if there's a tie-in to any of the political activity?
I have not done that. I'm focused on educating people on how to secure their vote. And I'll tell you one thing, guys. What we've identified is one way that the hack can happen. There's hundreds of ways. There's hundreds of ways to do it. I have had engineers work for me that could do this with their hands tied behind their back. This is Windows 2000 software. And a more complex system is not the answer. Because what is looking down the road is these vendors are saying, oh, let me program those cards for you counties. Don't worry, I'll do it. Because you don't have the expertise to do it. And that person programming the card, do you know their morals? Did you vote for them? Do you know who they are? No. Again, we're abdicating our responsibility. We have to step up and say no more. We can't just act like we don't know. And because we don't understand it, it's okay. It's not okay. Yes, sir.
Do you have a website with this documentation?
I do. And so did y'all, let me borrow this. Did you get one of these? The one pager? Okay. Our website's
Anyone need a one-pager?
Yeah, our website's at the top, and my phone number and my address is on there. And the second reason I'm here is to help, is to ask for your help. If you're so moved by our presentation, we really need your help financially. My husband and I have put $80,000 of our own savings into this lawsuit, and we can't do it by ourselves. So I need your help. And so we have 2 clipboards that we'll send around. And if you would be interested in making a donation, please put your name and address so I can record it, because we have to do that for finance reporting. But I need your help. So thank you for, yes sir, go ahead.
I have an answer. Actually, HART is owned by Nancy Pelosi's husband.
Oh, really? Well, they're based in Austin.
No.
They're based in Austin, I know that. Yes.
HART is more honest than most.
Not from what I see.
Mr. President,
Not from this.
can I ask another question?
Yes, sir.
Can you kind of tell us how you are and how's the progress in this lawsuit?
Yes, that's a great question. So we filed, our election was in December of 2014. We spent last year in court through the summer and going back and forth with discovery. And the judge threw us out of court with a no evidence summary judgment. We think we have evidence. We paid $1 a page, 12,000 pages of evidence for the appeals court. So I know there's evidence, I believe that. So we filed our first brief was in around September, and then our opponent filed their brief in December. I think it was January. And then we filed a final brief about 2 weeks ago. So we are in the appeals process, and because it's an election contest, what I'm saying is my candidate that I was running, the candidate I was running against should not be on city council. So it's an election contest that's accelerated. So they should move this along. We think we're going to hear something maybe in about a month. And there are several consequences of this lawsuit. Number 1, we could get a new election. Number 2, they could just send us back to the trial court and say, let her have evidence and finish this thing out. Or they could just rule that that ballot image that the Secretary of State says is a ballot image isn't. And they could also rule the Secretary of State should not be given waivers. That's what we're looking for.
I wanted to add something. I wanted to add something to the situation. At the recent RSEC meeting, there was a motion as the Republican Party of Texas to encourage the counties to print the tally tapes, knowing that these kind of waivers could be coming from the Secretary of State. That opinion or that initiative was defeated at the Republican SREC meeting when the my understanding was, it's a second-hand hearing. Was anyone there at the SREC?
So I was there.
Okay.
SR?
SREC.
The SREC meeting that was in Austin.
Oh, in Austin.
Okay. So when, my understanding was when Chairman Meckler, Tom Meckler, does anybody know Tom Meckler? Raise your hand, please. And you're going to be seeing him at this convention, okay? You need to ask him why a notice to encourage county clerks to follow the law would have been voted down at a SREC meeting. Secondly, what she's not mentioning is during this court case, because she had to sue her opponent who was a Democrat, the Democrat Party of Texas provided 5 attorneys for her opponent.
He has 10 attorneys.
Plus 4 from
Yes.
Travis County.
Yeah.
Would anyone like to ask, or answer, or guess how many attorneys were assigned to Ms. Pressley's case on behalf of the Texas Republican Party of Texas?
0.
0. But they're watching the case closely. I'm sorry, this one woman should not have to be battling for the entire integrity of the electronic voting system for the entire state of Texas. I'm not okay with hiding and watch and letting this woman fight the battle from expense and every aspect of it, and not to mention the fact, not thinking it's a good idea, and the story was that the attorney said, well, we just can't get involved in an individual lawsuit. Is this about an individual lawsuit? No. It's about the entire integrity of our electronic voting system. So I'd like for you to get your pencil out, and I want you to write down this name. Clinton Eugene Curtis. Go on YouTube.
Spell the last name.
Clinton, C-L-I-N-T-O-N, Eugene Curtis, C-U-R-T-I-S. On YouTube, and look for that name and election fraud. And what you're going to have is a testimony of Mr. Curtis, where he testifies that he wrote programs to do just exactly what you saw on that straight line plot of Ms. Pressley's. That it would flip any vote 51 to 49% to any election. When asked if election officials would ever be able to see it, his response was no, not unless you had the source code to look through the actual back end of the data of the computer system that generates this, or had paper receipts to do a comparative. So we are talking about the integrity of the entire election system in the nation. And I don't know about y'all, but the whole nation, I'm kind of like going, okay, y'all are there, I wish you well. If we can't get it right in Texas, this is where we are. So come this convention, I hope everyone is saying, Tom, it's not right that Ms. Pressley is out there battling for the entire state, financially, as well as without any backing. This should be coming in as a force to make sure that the Secretary of State is not on their own accord making these decisions. So I personally spoke with our Senator Charles Perry, who said go talk to the Legislative Council at his office, and they were very responsive. But here's what they got back from the Secretary of State. You understand that a cast vote record, when you vote, you see an image, which should be like your camera. You should have an image. And then your data, that your selections go into a database, and that's the tabulated data. A cast vote record is nothing more than a computer-generated report from the same tabulated data. So personally, if you know anybody that's done a recount in several years, I would get a class action lawsuit and sue the state of Texas for charging me for a recount that did nothing more than gave me the same tabulated data. Because that recount was not in compliance with state law. That ballot image, and here's what's so important about, I do have a degree in computer science, and she is my friend. The importance of the ballot image is when you go to hack a computer system, you write a computer program that sits there and analyzes the data for whatever office you're looking at, and then that computer system just goes in there and changes the data fields. Now, going in and trying to pull up that data image, which is a picture, and manually going in there and whiting out what was black before and blacking out a new one is virtually impossible. That is how come the aspect of not retaining a ballot image is so egregious. And then the report back from the Secretary of State of Senator Perry's inquiry was that a cast vote record is a ballot image. No.
It doesn't meet the legal requirements. It doesn't have a certain number to know the date of election, none of it. And that's where we're the first one in the state who's ever challenged that.
In 2011, the
people know it, but they never challenged it in a court.
So the sum of it is we take their word at face value and we're supposed to forget about the law.
Yeah. Keep
Because-
moving, don't look here.
No, what was the response? It's what we do.
It's what we do.
Well, you guess what? They need to know what we do. Yes.
I don't know anything about legality, but can a class action lawsuit be filed?
Well, interesting, these election contests have a certain time frame. And for the primaries that happened in March 1st, the deadline for a contest for that group was Monday at 5 p.m. So the deadlines have passed for contests. That's why this election contest that we did is really important, because we met the deadline. We've got the evidence. We've gotten further than any candidate in the country. No candidate in the country's ever gotten these audit logs, guys.
The Hart Intercivic
You
System.
can't get them without a lawsuit.
The Hart Intercivic System that we use in the state of Texas was decommissioned in 2007 by the Secretary of State of California. Now, this system comes with what's called a voter ballot, a printout. It's not a ballot, verified voter record, VBR. Everything's an abbreviation. And what it is, it would be a printout that you as a voter, you saw a printout. It's not really a ballot because it doesn't meet the 5 definitions, but at least it's a tangible report. You see the report and then it sucks back into the computer system. The reason you can't walk out with a receipt of how you voted is because there are unions that would twist people's arm, and you have to have the sanctity of how you voted, but it sucks back in it. So at least there's a tangible to reconcile with. Right now there's nothing. And the aspect, when McCullough County was very cooperative, we came and got I said, would you give me a ballot image? They said, sure. Well, what they printed out was a cast vote record. The clerks don't understand the difference between the two because they are being told that a cast vote record is a ballot. It's not the clerk's fault. Whose feet need to be held to fire is the Secretary of State. And this aspect of giving waivers, of impeding the checks and balances that are in place, the aspect that Ms. Pressley's lawsuit would have shown at least 6 different state laws that were being violated, and when asked to have evidence, to have it be thrown out for no evidence, Ms. Pressley, you have no evidence, actually asked for the log to talk to a deposition of the person, to get the memory card. Ms. Pressley, you have no evidence. Do y'all have a problem with that? Okay, that was done by Dan Mills out of Blanco County. He lost his bid for district office in Llano area, and then he was appointed to Blanco County. So I don't know about how y'all feel about our court system. I find that unacceptable. So what do we do about it? I would ask you to call the Republican Party themselves. Anne Marie is assistant to Chairman Meckler. When you see him, because if we don't get behind this woman, it's somewhat been falling on deaf ears. And what happens in Austin is there's a kind of a respectful hierarchy of chain. So legislators make law. So after legislation's over, they feel like they've done their job, and then it's off to the office who's supposed to make sure the law is followed. Well, that would be the Secretary of State. So it's kind of like, well, the Secretary of State said the cast vote record is a ballot. So it's going to have to come from us. So thank you for letting me elaborate.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Well, when you think about banking, like truncation.
Oh, that's such a good analogy.
And
it is.
I get a copy of any check I've written.
That's right.
Or your credit card report. There is no reason why they can't have these voting machines as safe.
Well, you know what, even if they give you a receipt, that doesn't guarantee it's being counted later right. So I don't want you to be, I'm going to say this again. In complexity, corruption can hide. So the answer, in my mind, is simplicity. A paper ballot, it gets cast at the precinct, it gets counted at the precinct before they leave the building. And it may take till 2 o'clock in the morning. Billions of dollars are resting on the shoulders of the people we elect. It has to be right, guys. We have abdicated our responsibility for convenience. So here's the choice, convenience or accuracy. Because again, in complexity, corruption can easily hide because this stuff's very, you have to sit here and listen to an hour presentation to get it. Because this is not simple. It's not something you can explain in 5 minutes. Yes, sir.
You keep saying just the Republican Party, but it actually crosses both lines, because who's ever corrupting can be for that party versus the other party.
Well, we've had multiple reports from Democrat groups, Republican groups. The thing about it is, when you've got no checks and balances, it's up for whoever is the most creative in the fraud, right? And I call it fraud of choice. It's like drug of choice. Every county's different. Some have paper, some have electronic, some print, some don't. Fraud of choice.
And you're talking about the legislature and laws, they can only pay you so many hours when you're working that day, and so the rest of it would be volunteering. So they even made a law where you can only get paid for certain.
Right, but you can have a fresh set of people come in and do the
Right.
counting. And you know what? You can have actually a camera watching as they're being called off and as they're being counted. What?
I asked that chair that just left the room in an angry huff. I said, how easy would it be to just have a camera there? He says, well, the privacy of the... I said, no, I'm not watching the progress. I'm saying have a
To
camera
count.
on the computer.
Well, even on the computer, it doesn't matter. It's got a black box program running. You can't see
Oh,
it.
yeah, but he
I'm
said,
saying a paper ballot with a camera watching how it's being called out. And any candidate can go back and monitor that and make sure they were called off correctly. Yes, sir.
I've done a little bit of research myself, and you and I have communicated back and forth. So I will make everybody aware of this. There is a computer hacking group that has a competition every year before the election. And every year, this group, there's a $5,000 reward for the one that can hack the voting system, Debo or Hart. It's a random drawing of the computer system that's going to be hacked during this competition. And the winner that can do this the fastest gets $5,000 cash.
Wow.
And they meet every year before the time of the election, so everybody can get the information out on how to hack the computers for the latest election that's coming up. Well, up till last year, 11 seconds was about the norm. 11 to 14 seconds got the money. Well, a guy from Ohio stepped up this year and did it in 9 seconds.
Oh my gosh,
And
9
he just
seconds.
happened to do it to the hard voting machines.
Yeah.
Out of this same group, I contacted this guy. We had a quite long conversation till 3 o'clock in the morning, and he even volunteered and gave me the access codes, the original codes to the hard machines and the Debo machines. So, and with that information, you can sit outside any voting booth in the United States with that 5-digit code that I just happen to know, and with a laptop and your air card plugged into your laptop as an air card, you can sit outside the voting system and you can hack any computer that's any election, and the people that's working the polls and everything can do 100% of everything right, and they can still get to it the last 2 or 3 seconds before all of that's tabulated.
9 seconds. That's amazing.
And I also had the same group of hackers, and come to find out, hackers stay up. They go to sleep at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they sleep and they hack all night long, because that's when the big corporations' computer systems are at sleep, powered down at night, and that's the easiest access time to them. They go in and put a bug in, it'll work, and during the day, some nonsensical element, they corrupt it, and then they come back in and reactivate it that night when there isn't access to it. So computer hackers, if you want to talk to one of them, you're going to have to talk at 2 or 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, because that's their sleep patterns. I had guys that even offered me to build me the equipment to remotely hack any computer that you want to hack, and I'm talking about not high dollar. I looked online, and you can find used hard voting machines in the state of Florida, and the Attorney General down there tried to auction them off and sell them, and all they got was $1 per machine for $200. Now you can go back online yourself and look at it, and they're up to $11 each now. And the module that routes these votes, you can buy them used on the internet. You can go on the internet and type in, put it on computer voting modules. You can buy a module for about $8. And it takes a $4.25 reprogrammable chip that you can program off of your laptop with Windows 2000. You can go in there and buy an $8 router, and that'll go in the face of that machine. You take 4 screws out, You open the front of that machine, you stick it in, and you have just won yourself any election that you want to use in county.
Thank you, Woody.
It would be cheaper than a lawsuit there.
It'd be cheaper than a lawsuit. I need to learn how to do that, don't I? I thought of that.
My idea was to
That's
find
not
out
what I
exactly
do.
how they do that.
I'm too honest.
They've also got a system, you can buy a garage door opener from Sears Roebuck. $28, you put about $24 worth of antennas and extra parts in it, and with those 5-digit access code, I can, if I wanted to, I'm not gonna do it, because it's 20 years to go to jail, you could come right over here to San Angelo, and I could hack your system.
So one thing I want
wanted
to,
it all.
thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I want to ask one quick question about, in regards to the paper ballots. Do each paper ballot, I've never looked at it that closely, do they each have a unique serial number on them?
Yes, they do.
So then, I'm investigating right now a county that did all paper ballots, and they ran out, and they just started printing them off on the copier on location.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Can I
No
interrupt?
accountability.
Yeah.
I want to
That's right.
interrupt for just a second. Our meeting is officially over at 8, but I think we'll just keep going as long as you want to stay here and have fun. I don't care.
I'm here, whether we're talking like
If
this
you
or
feel
online.
like if you got something to do, don't feel embarrassed if you have to leave.
Yeah.
But as long as she's having fun and you guys got a lot of questions, I'm having a great time, so go ahead.
Thank you. There's one thing, and Woody, this goes to what you were saying. The law says that you cannot have a wireless connection, you cannot have a wireless system. Okay, this, I think it was, I'm not sure what the date of that law was, maybe it was in the 90s or the 80s. And what happened with the Secretary of State this time, guys? Do y'all remember, did you have wireless capability? You sure did. So that's number 4 for the Secretary of State violating law. They authorized this system that's a wireless system now at the polls.
So they're gonna have to be at the machine now.
Who knows? So y'all had it, right? It was the, what's it called,
I don't know.
the voting registration system?
Mhm.
Yeah.
But we actually hooked onto the wireless system at the facility we were at.
Yeah.
They didn't even give us the MiFi.
There you go. That's also a violation. So now, no tape, no audit, no image, wireless. We're done. We're cooked. We're going to have to stand up and say no, guys. We are. We want our elections. Have you ever had a state rep or senator or council member or commissioner who didn't listen to the voters?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe they know we don't matter. Maybe they know. We've got to put a stop to this. So, I need your help. So if you can help us financially, I need it. If you're going to be at the convention, we have multiple counties who have put up resolutions to say stop the violations of the Secretary of State. We've got multiple resolutions to go back to paper for Texas. We've got multiple resolutions to say reduce those early voting.
Well, we did that here, but Deborah said it got voted down, or didn't go
Y'all
forward.
voted it down here at the committee?
At the county.
At the county.
Well, we there. McCullough did it, McCullough passed it, Travis County passed it, Parker County, Kaufman County. We've got multiple counties, so those of you who's going to the convention as a delegate? Oh, I love you. I love you, I'll be there too. Yeah. Yes, sir.
One of the real hard things that everybody's got to understand when you're fighting this battle, and I'm trying to get our entire county to go to paper only. I mean, that's just the only way.
And it's not perfect, but you get to see, and you can put things around that and not run out or start numbering them by hand, even if you have to do that, okay? There's ways to control paper ballot. Paper ballot's not perfect, guys, we know that. But I'll tell you what, you take a lot of issues off the table with that. You don't vote count them in secret, like it's being done now.
One of the problems that she's going to run into, and she knows this better than anybody else, but by looking at this system, the research that I've done, almost any person that's been elected since 2000, their election is that we've got people in office now that's holding those positions. Almost anybody that's been elected since 2000, you can call in question that's the deal on this, were you legitimately elected, or
That's right.
did you hire a hacker to run a program?
Well, and I'll tell you nothing, does anybody know Senator Bob Hall?
Yes.
Senator Bob Hall did a press release about a week ago, and you talk about a courageous man.
Yes,
He went out on a limb, and he said exactly that, Woody. Elections today cannot be verified. And he just said it. Oh my gosh. He's here. It's amazing he did that, but he's right. So we're getting grassroots to say to our representatives, pay attention. We're not happy. We don't trust the system. And I'll tell you what, when the people stop trusting it, they're in big trouble. The status quo is in big trouble.
He's a roach that got lights showing on it.
Any other questions? And I'll be here for a little bit before I drive back home. Anybody else questions?
Did you take any of this to the Rangers?
To the Rangers? No. We go to the appeals court.
What the Rangers will tell you is none of the district attorneys in this county are interested in hearing anything about voting.
I believe it. It's just, it's like, it's taboo. It's taboo. Yes, ma'am.
This is just a comment. The other day, Rush Limbaugh said that the Dems have learned that elections are far too important. Nobody will get the vote.
That's right. That's right.
And he
Nothing's
paused
left
and
for
said,
chance.
"Yes, you heard me right."
Nothing's left to chance, guys. Big money. Billions and
So you
billions
could
of
have
dollars.
a determine our next presidential election.
Absolutely.
Maybe they already did.
I think you're right, yeah.
Any more questions? I want everybody to give this young lady a round of applause.